Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Thursday Tidbit, where we're going to be talking about web browser usage and visualizing trends, continuing what we discussed in last week's video. So if you haven't seen that video, I would check that out. We're going to jump in and do a little bit more show and tell today and discuss some different ways of visualizing some of these trends. So, what were we looking at? Remember, we were looking at web browser usage over time. So we don't have all of the data here. I'll link that again below, but we have some data from 2010, 2020. Sources are linked in that sheet below too. But we looked at market share first, so the percentage of people based on clicks using different browsers. Internet Explorer, which is now shut down, motivation for this video, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, other, and seeing how that could change over time. So we looked at some pie charts last time, calculated estimated number of users based on some of this data. And those pie charts, the tables, they help us get a snapshot of a single year. And then the question might be, well, how can we visualize this over time better? So, we've looked at those 2 years, and our question, as mentioned, what types of graphs might we look at? How might we visualize this data as changing over time? Things like that as well. So, one way to do this is, especially because it's a time element, have a time element to our graph as well, So we could show this pie chart as it changes over time in an animation or something, So if we have this pie chart, we can see it changing over time here. So, we can see this loops, So 2009, big IE, IE is going down, Chrome is getting bigger, Things like that there. So if we kind of think about this and the pros and cons of this chart, this really does a good job of showing Internet Explorer shrinking over time, Chrome growing over time. Because it's moving quickly, because it repeats, it's hard to tell specific values. It's hard to look at things specifically there. But this animation really shows you a high-level picture of what's going on. But what if we wanted maybe a little bit more detail? What if we wanted to estimate numbers and things like that and didn't want to pause this pie chart at times? What could we look at? You could also look at a line chart or a line graph, depending on how you think about that there. And so this one especially is easier to highlight specific ones, So if we want to kind of highlight the Internet Explorer a little bit, we can start seeing some specific values there too. It's really easy to look at. Okay, kind of right away, it's this kind of linear type decrease, It narrows out over time, stuff like that too, It's easier to highlight a specific one, follow how that's going, We could contrast this to Chrome, Chrome's rise over this same time period there as well, And so we can look at these kind of different charts depending on what we want to highlight from there too. Maybe you just want to show Internet Explorer, ignoring the other browsers that way, That's easier to do in a line chart and modify stuff that way as well. Now, let's see another use of the line chart and an example where we're going more specifically talking about Internet Explorer as well. So these two graphs are pie chart animated, this line chart, line graph showing market share over time. So the percentage of estimated people who are using the given browser based on websites being visited that way. And our other big question we talked about was estimated number of IE users over time. So if you look at the linked data below, We have the market share data. We also have estimates of global internet users. So total internet users, of course, that means they're using one of the browsers. So as we did in last week's video, right, if we have some number of users, so if there's 3 million people using the internet, right, then and 50% are using Internet Explorer, we can multiply to figure that out. So that's something you can easily do in a spreadsheet program, in a programming type thing. And then again, you can look at that graph over time. So this graph here is the graph of estimate number of users for Internet Explorer over time. So it's a little bit interesting here, right? This is similar to the graph we saw before, except now we have a little bit of differences because as the number of Internet Explorer users are decreasing, the total number of users is going up. So this decline is a little bit less steep at the beginning, right? For our first 2 years, even though the browser share dropped, if you go back to that, the estimated number of total users was going up, so they didn't see a huge drop in users that way as well. Right, and so this trend here is similar, but this is something that is also good to compare and think about when you might want to use one type of data over the other. Right, if you're a business, of course you would like to have a dominant market share, but from a profit point of view, maybe, right, if there's just more people using this type of product, even if your market share drops, if your users pool is going up, maybe the number of users you have is staying the same. So those are different things you might want to keep in mind, and it's at least interesting to keep in mind those two metrics here, right? Total market share versus the number of users you would have at a given time. Unfortunately for Internet Explorer, both of these things at the end show the downward spiral, the downward trend, and that's why it's being discontinued and not going to be used anymore that way. So, little bit of wrap up here. So this week's video is a little bit shorter since we're just doing more of this visualization stuff. As mentioned, right, and the original pie charts were made in Excel, right? So a lot of a good place to start is Excel or Google Sheets. So you can look at your data, you can highlight your data, you can click the chart button in Excel or in Google Sheets and start visualizing data that way as well. Right? Stuff like the animated data or, right, really quickly modifying stuff, right, might be easier to do. And if you're going to do this more seriously, looking into programming languages such as Python, there's also R for data science, things like that. But here, right, we did some of these charts using Python and the matplotlib package. So these are things you can download. You can download Python, you can install this package. There's different places online you can do this stuff, right? And in particular, the more you get into this, I definitely want to give a shout out to the Pandas library. This is a Python data science library. It integrates very well with other libraries such as matplotlib, right? And so if you're really interested in this data analysis, right, looking at your spreadsheet, downloading data, modifying data, manipulating it, doing calculations with it, visualizing it, this is definitely something that interested people should look into and try to learn more about. So that will do it for this week's video, right? Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give us a like, give us a comment. If you'd like to hear more, right, if you want some tips on how maybe to get started with Python or some of these libraries, let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll have a new topic next week. You can suggest those in a comment as well. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.